right. We're alive. Words matter. For that matter, letters matter. When you say the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So you have to be very careful in the word echad. Echad, the duh, right? The dalid, because it's very easy to make from a dalid Hashem acher. From make the dalid into a resh, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at the letter of a dalid, let's find the letter dalid over here. Mm-hmm. The letter Dalid is a line across and down, and there's a little piece extending, not pointing up, but extending to the right side after the line, right? Like this. That's a Dalid, right? That's a Dalid.
But the end of that tips up a little bit.
Yeah, but that's not what's important here. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right? What's that? That's a resh. Look how just off a touch, you make a different letter. So if you say echad, means one God. If you now change the aleph, the ches, to keep that the same, and just take a little tip off and pronounce it as a reish, you have a Hashem acher, another God. Another God, which is idolatry. In other words, letters matter so much that you could have just, imagine writing it, saying it, it'll be harder, but to write it, the Dalid and the Resh is such a little bit of a difference. But it makes worlds apart. One is one God, oneness of God, and the other one is other gods. So we have to be very careful when we're saying the Shema, that we say Hashem Echad.
Yeah, we're supposed to pay attention to the
be very intentional about that Dalid, to make sure it's a Dalid, a very clear Dalid instead of a Resh.
Thank you.
So now, of course, words matter, that we always knew, but here we're going to a different level. Letters matter, because you change a letter, you just, maybe you didn't make the Dalet exactly like that, and you made it a little like this, and it's not so clear, what is it? Is a Dalet, is a Resh, right? One, you create worlds, the other one, you destroy worlds. One is oneness of God that brings light to this world, and the other one brings destruction to this world because it's idolatry, other gods. Whoa. For that, we need a l'chaim. L'chaim v'bracha.
Nothing's coincidental.
Nothing. Everything is precise as an exact science. Welcome to Tanya today. We are learning the physics of the universe, pure physics. This is the true, pure physics of the universe. That's what we are learning together. Tomorrow we will have a siyum, a conclusion of this book, the second book of the pure physics of the universe. We've been speaking about unity. In the first part, the first 7 chapters of Tanya spoke about a yichudi ilah, a higher form of unity of God. That is, there's nothing else but God. There's no something. There's no thing. Just God. Now we're going into, there is a something. What is that something? God. That's called the lower level of unity. It's a recognition that there is plurality. But really, what's the plurality? Is nothing else but God. Right? There's nothing else but the presence of God.
He's not a thing.
Right? In the plurality. Well, how do we get plurality? Where's plurality come from? See, in emotions, think about it for a moment. In emotions, there's not so much plurality there, right? There's really, when it comes, there's an emotion that will incorporate many expressions. So kindness, love will have many, many expressions, which will be in speech, words, language, letters to make words. Mm-hmm. But in the feeling itself, right? It's beyond language. So the higher level of nullification of the world is beyond language. There's no thing, not even language. That's the higher level of divine unity. But here we're understanding the lower level. Lower doesn't mean worse. It means the light is more reduced, more contracted. Right. More tzimtzum, exactly.
More veiled.
More veiled, exactly. And as a result of that, there's the appearance of plurality, of distinction, of things, right? But what is ultimately that in the things, there is only but God, Hashem Echad, right? Oneness of God. Now the question is, how do you get there? How do we understand that? How do we understand that God creates a world that has plurality in it of things? Now, we experience it. I'm asking you, do you experience? Of course. I experience David's coffee. Soon I'll even experience breakfast. I experience, davening. I experience, tzedakah, your smile, all these different things, right? Ultimately, there's only but one thing, the oneness of God in all of the plurality. Okay, but how do we get to all these things? So in emotions, in the emotion of love, there is only the feeling of love that has no expression to it. So it's, right? The feeling itself has no expression. The thought has, the words do, the actions do, right? That's what we call them. We call them clothing, right? We call them garments because garments express the person. They express the person, right? Those are garments, but the feeling itself is beyond that. So you can have feelings that you don't express, and they're deep down, they're rooted, right? There's a complete, in that level, there's complete only oneness of God on that level, right? But here we go a step further. Now it comes into expression through words, but now more specifically, not words, letters.
Expression different from creation.
We're talking about God manifesting himself in creation. He manifests himself through his attributes. Yeah. Attributes are one with God. Yeah. On that level, there's no distinction. There's just the oneness of God. This is not a hand. This is an expression of God's kindness. That's what the higher level says. It's not a hand. You don't perceive it as a hand. You don't act upon it as a hand. You only act upon it as being an expression of the divine. That's a higher level of unity, but that's not what we're talking now. We're talking about the lower level. This is a hand. But what is it? Nothing else that it should be used only, right? In other words, there's a reality of hand, the first level, there's no reality of hand. There is no reality of hand. There's only reality of the oneness of God. Here, there's a reality of hand. There's a reality of coffee. There's a reality of breakfast. There's a reality of all these things. But what really is its inner truth is nothing else but God. It's a different entry point, right? A different perspective, right? This lower level, why is that? What's the value here? What's the value over here? Then the higher level. Isn't the higher level greater?
Purpose, yes, yeah, would be great. But it all depends on what's the perspective. So, for instance, from what I understand you're saying, in terms of the lower level, that may not be of any value to the higher level.
The lower level is a purpose.
But to the
That's why you created for the lower level.
Higher level is, this is not a hand. This is just an extension of God's kindness, right? This is an extension of God's gvura. That's all it is. That awareness and living that way, right? Living that way. The lower level of unity, this is a hand. What is it meant for and only for? To do an act of kindness, to give tzedakah, reach out to someone, whatever it might be, right?
Mhm.
The second level is that there is distinction, there is multiplicity, and in the multiplicity, you appreciate the uniqueness of this versus this versus something else, and the uniqueness of it and how it plays itself out in the role of revealing godliness. The higher level, there's no uniqueness to anything. There's no specialty in anything. It's all just but an expression of God, right? So there's no, the lower level brings a more of a revealing in the detail of the uniqueness of everything, its divinity.
It's like the sun, the sun, the sun.
Yeah.
Rays in it.
Yeah.
And then we see the
right.
effect of the sunlight's rays.
Right, but that's because the problem with that metaphor is that the rays of the sun is all the same, right? Here we're talking about, so that it's not a good metaphor. The rays of the sun, it's not a good metaphor. Well, listen, it's not a good metaphor. It's not a good metaphor, because the rays of the sun are divine attributes of God, as opposed to the sun is God in the metaphor, right? So the divine attributes, right, of God are really bound up in one with God. Like the rays are really the rays in the sun. That's a higher level of unity. There's not a hand. This is the way I'm in my source, in the sun, the rays of the sun within the sun. Even when they extend out of the sun, really, that's not the proper metaphor, because in the end, it's all rays. It's all attributes of God. So the metaphor is that there's a stone, there's a tree, there's an animal, there's a person. All of these distinctions, and in all of these, there's so many different pluralities, right? There's so much diversity. There's so much diversity, right?
Yes.
Right? Now, in this, the key over here in the diversity, is that in the diversity to appreciate the uniqueness in everything and how it is uniquely has a divine element to it. And that way, it's a greater accomplishment than the higher level.
Anything with angels and man? Nothing. That's not a metaphor at all. Okay.
No, has to do with letters.
Okay. Yes.
Has to do with the Dalid versus the Resh, for example, right? Then, in other words, it comes to the minutia of a little big deal, like, come on, get over it. What's the difference if you wrote in your mezuzah or in the Torah scroll, Hashem Echad, and you didn't exactly get it like this. You got it kind of like this. and not exactly certain. Is this a dalet or a resh? And the halacha is you have to go to a child who doesn't recognize words, but recognizes letters. Because in context, they'll say, oh, of course it's a chad, right? Of course it's a chad, it's a dalet. So they recognize a letter, but not a word, right? What letter is that? Because if it's a dalet, so then there's a unity of God here. If it's not, then you've brought destruction. It's an invalid mezuzah. It's an invalid Torah scroll. You can't read from it. You can't put it up on your door. It doesn't bring godliness into this world. Right? In other words, words don't just matter. Letters matter. God creates the world with 22 letters. And that's because the 22 letters of the alphabet, that's how we have diversity. That's how we have the multitude of creatures. They're all divided, all of creation, into these letters that are animating everything. Right? From combinations of letters, substitutions and transpositions, and even numeric value called gematria. Right? Every letter is a flow from the individual and particular life force and power. So the letter is not symbolic. It's actually a flow of divine energy. So if you wrote the mezuzah like this with a resh instead of the dalet, the divine flow of energy is not coming. Right? Every letter is that way. Of course, only in the Hebrew language. Only in the Hebrew language, or rather, Lashon Kodesh, the holy language, right? An A and a B is all, meaningless, because it's all, what's the word? It's not inherently an A is an A and a B is a B, because we could just change and decide that the B should be the A and the A should be the B, right? Now there's nothing inherent to it. But in Hebrew language, it is inherent that the letter is a flow of divine energy. So the shape of the letter, the way we pronounce the letter, the numeric value of the letter, the meaning of the letter is all a divine flow of divine energy, right? That is now, so you have each letter is, but then when you make a full letter with a full word, then the word becomes even a more powerful field of energy, of life force, of creative power of God than the individual letters. So the sum whole is even greater than the letters themselves, even though the letters themselves are. Furthermore, the first letter is also more indicative of the life force. Being it's the first letter, and that's why we have Rosh Tevas. We have the head of letters, right? So we can is like Rashi. We call him Rashi. Why is he called Rashi? Reb Shlomo Yitzchaki. Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the son of Yitzchak, right? It's an acronym. Where do you come make an acronym? Because each first letter is a more powerful form of divine energy than the rest of the letters. The rest of the letters follow the first letter. So the first letter is more powerful. The whole word is more powerful than the individual letters, and even the combination of all of them, and even the first letter. Yeah. So now we can see how God, through the letters, is creating a multitude of creations, billions of things.
Okay, but that is only for Lashon HaKodesh, because for modern Hebrew, which would have taken words from other languages.
No, it's only a Lashon HaKodesh. Yeah. Only the Holy Tongue.
Yeah.
Therefore, when you're saying a blessing, you're actually through those words, because those letters and the words are actually a vehicle to bring down the light of God, right? So when God says, let there be a firmament, right? Yirakia, he's creating an expansive. It's not just like, oh, the heavens above. All different, 7 different levels of heavens. There's the Shachakim, there's the Zvul, there is the Mochain, all different levels of Rakia from the very letters, right? Depending on what combination, what letters you're taking. And it's not the letters themselves only, because now you can take from those letters and make combinations. And we said this before. Fire is not mentioned in the 10 utterances, but if you take Aleph from Or, from light, and you take Shin from Shemesh, from sun, right? Sun and light, you take the 2 letters, that's already a combination from another word. That shows on a come down, on a contraction, right? A tzimtzum on the divine energy. Fire is not as powerful as light and as the sun, right? Those are created in the 6 days of creation. Fire only actually was discovered. Fire is not something that was discovered only Saturday nights after creation, right? So they may have Havdalah, so you need fire, right? Friday night, right? Saturday night. So it was discovered, right? It's not right, but what it means is a combination of letters. Then you have like the word Evan. Evan means a stone. We learned this previously. One second. So Aleph, Aleph Beis Nun. Beis Nun is 52, numeric value of 52 is one of the name of God, is numeric value of 52. You have Yud K Vav K, right?
Twice, 2 times 26.
No. 1 second. Here. When you take a Yud, you spell it out. Yud Vav Dalet, numeric value of 20. Hey, to make hey is 10. Vav to Vavs, right? When you pronounce the letter, there's a way to write it out the way you pronounce it, right? And then hey again, that's 10. 20, 10, 12, and 10 is 52. That's one of the names of God, the numeric value, the gematria, right? Gematria, numeric value shows that not the value, not the value of the letter itself, but the value of the letter, right? So like, how much is your value? That's not you. That's only your value. There's you and then there's your value. So the same thing, there's the letter and then the value of the letter. The value is lesser than you, right? That means it shows on a contraction of the divine light in God in creation when it's only the value of the letter rather than the letter itself, right? So Evan, because it's more of a contraction of the divine light of God, so now it's only the value of the letters, not the letters themselves. Showing again of a contraction. What does it create? A stone. What's the point of this? Is to show how God creates numerous, different types of creation. Because when you think about all the combinations you can make with 22 letters, which letter comes first? How many, the word can be made, it can be a 2-letter word, it can be a 5-letter word, right? And it doesn't even have to, and it can be a combination. It can be taking a letter from somewhere else or the numeric value. If you would think about that, there would be billions of possibilities. And that's the diversity of the world. All of it is what? So when you're looking at a little ant crawling, you're looking at a cup of David's coffee over here, right? Or you're looking at yourself. It's all being animated from a different combination, substitutions, transpositions, or gematria of God that is animating with his letters, right? That is showing a great diversity and multitudinous of creation. But in the end, what is it? It's all from God. It's all of God. Nothing else but. when we have that awareness, right? So then we appreciate the uniqueness of everything in creation, how it is ultimately in its uniqueness an expression of God, right? So in other words, not that this is nothing else but God, right? And this is nothing else but God, and there's really no difference. It's all an expression of God. Here we're saying, no. There's a uniqueness. This is uniquely animated differently than my eye, different than the cup of coffee, and appreciate the uniqueness of everything in creation, how ultimately it is only but the expression of the divine. And use it out in its uniqueness, right? Not as like, just like, it's all the same. In its uniqueness to express
Appreciate.
nothing else, not to appreciate.
Okay.
Not about it's more than appreciation. It's about the using it, whatever it is that you have, and its uniqueness in an expression of the divine, right? Yes, appreciate, but not sufficiently to appreciate. First, you got to appreciate. That's true, but then you need to use it in such a way, right?
We appreciate it because.
So there's a story with the previous Rebbe. He was 11 years old, walking with his father in a field, and his father speaking about God's presence in creation, Hashgacha Pratis, right? The divine providence of God within creation, and he's speaking, and the 11-year-old boy, just like in thinking and what his father is saying, and kind of meditative state even, he rips a leaf off a tree and crumbles it in his hand. I don't want to say it was mindless, because we're talking about the previous Rebbe. At 11 years old, he was more mature than I am today. Much more, right? Much more self-aware, much more, aligned divinely. Yet, his father reprimanded him. Here we're speaking about divine providence, God's presence in everything, and you just rip off a leaf from the tree? And he reprimanded him. Of course, being the holy person he was, he accepted it totally and understood. In other words, there's something unique about a leaf on a tree. It's not just a leaf on the tree, like billions of leaves on trees. What's the big deal? More leaves like that to come. I don't know about maple leaves, is it more like that to come? But right? What's the big deal? Well, if you really appreciate that God is animating this leaf right now, and really, like you said, appreciate, be aware, then you would act upon it differently. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't cut your grass, because that, or trim your bushes. Yes. Doesn't mean that the leaves are there to overrun our garden. No, doesn't mean that at all, because that's purposeful, that's intentional, right? To reveal godliness, having a nice garden, right? Fine, that's okay. But it's being highly intentional of what? That there's something unique about a leaf that God's animating right now. Divinely so. Uniquely animating that leaf in its uniqueness versus anything else in creation. And appreciating that in the way we're speaking about it, and appreciating it, that there is a vital force that's in that leaf that God is animating. What is the vital force? Is it like it's the letters of in the Hebrew letters that are the vital force in it, to appreciate what it is and to understand. In Kabbalah, it'll explain, everything in creation. Ultimately, it can explain how the letter is actually that thing. Those letters that make up the word is that thing. The Rebbe, before his Rebbe in 1947, when he went to France, to Paris, to pick up his mother when she came out of Russia, to bring her to the United States. So he made a Fabringen. And by the Fabringen, everybody that was there, he told them who they were based on their name. Because your name is the vital force, your Hebrew name, right? That's why giving a Misha Berach, you need to have that Hebrew name, for Jewish, of course. If you're not, then it's your English name or whatever your given name is, right? That it is. One second.
Rabbi.
1 second. Okay. To appreciate, be aware of the diversity and everything in creation, and to appreciate how its uniqueness is, to use it for a higher purpose. Yes.
The chair I'm sitting in,
Uh-huh.
it's a chair. Yet it's creation of Hashem.
Right.
So my connection to the chair, me sitting on the chair, my back against the chair against the ground, by being aware that it is holy.
No, the chair's not holy.
Not holy, but it's
No, that doesn't make it holy.
holy.
It just means God is animating it, that we need to behave, interact with it in an appropriate, godly way. It's not holy.
I don't mean holy. I mean,
Yeah. No. Okay. Interact with it in a proper, holy way.
So,
I've got to be holy, not the chair.
I'm appreciating what you said. The chair, I appreciate it more knowing that than if I didn't know that.
Right.
My connection to the chair, my feeling of the chair, brings me to now. Absolutely, brings me to the mindfulness. Absolutely,
Right.
knowing that.
Yeah. Totally. John has a question. When Adam identified the animals, was he able to beyond the physicality and appreciate how the letters were arranged? Exactly. That's why he called it. Thank you, John. When Adam in the book of in creation started creation, so he named the animals. How did he do that? Because he was aware of the letters that make up the word, that is the vibrant, that is reverb, which is being vested within the animal to give it existence. So when he looked at a lion, oh, Ari, that's an Ari. When he looked at a bear, oh, that's a dove.
And those are the words that are still used today in biblical people.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow.
There are 400,000 different species of beetles. Each one of them a purpose here. Diverse enough. Yeah. Wow. So most people, diversity, maybe we appreciate it, because it makes life a little more interesting, right? But it also makes the life a lot more complicated, right? It's easy to live in the simple box of how we perceive, it's much more arbitrary. Thank you, John. That was a word I was looking for. Before the A, B, C is arbitrary. That the A is an A and a B is a B. That was the word. Thank you. Very good. Knows what I'm thinking. Before, remember, I'm just looking at the comments over here. So before we were speaking about ABC, right? That it's the letter A and the shape of the letter, and that we pronounce it A, is arbitrary. For all intents and purposes, we could pronounce that letter B, and it could be the second letter, that shape, or it could be the fifth letter. It's arbitrary. But the Aleph is not arbitrary, that it's first letter. The base is not arbitrary. that it's the second letter, and the Gimel that's third. And it's not arbitrary the shape of it. It's not arbitrary the way we pronounce it. We've once gone through this. Maybe we'll go through another time. Aleph Beis Gimel Daled, the story that it tells us. Amazing story. Okay, any other questions? Now we have clarity. Tomorrow we finish the second book. Amazing. Amazing, all of you. Wow. And of course, then we will go into the third book.
Celebrate it.
We'll celebrate like we celebrate everything. Exactly. Maybe we'll celebrate with David's coffee. Rambam coming up, folks. We're learning the laws of Matnasanim, the gifts to the poor. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zurich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have an amazing, great day.